Put it on presentation mode.
Hope it is visible. So, yeah, there is an issue of echo. I think someone's audio is.
Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, actually good evening everyone. This side Dr. Girish Kumar, and we have a joint paper on constitutional morality and its oracle, and this is a highly discussed topic these days in the Supreme Court intervention in many judicial decisions. Every country is having a constitution and a resultant morality which is based on rule of law, irrespective of all other extraneous considerations. Through this paper, we are trying to inquire how important is constitutional morality for a state which is governed by rule of law, and what are the ways forward. I invite my research scholar, Mr. Arjun George, to take forward the presentation.
So, our paper is titled as Constitutional Morality and its Oracle. The term morality is something that varies from one individual to another. The use of such term to define the rights and duties of citizens and citizens, governments, and the executive branch, as well as the legislative branch of a modern democratic state, is something that we should look into, because in a modern democracy, the law is supposed to be governed on the grounds of definiteness, and it should not vary from time to time. Oracle is a term which is used to describe people who perform priestly acts. They are the proponents of various religions. So this is a term which is used to refer to priests. When the Supreme Court takes up a role as the oracle of constitution and constitutional morality, it needs to be critically looked into, and it needs to be critically evaluated. As said by the critical legal school law should not be always presumed to be unbiased, unproblematic, and it should not be presumed that law is always open to modernity. It should always viewed with a suspicion. Similarly, the judgments of the Supreme Court also needs to be studied and critically evaluated. The term morality, as already said, is in simple words can be defined as code of conduct. However, it varies from society to society, and it also varies from one person to another. The Constitution of India have not defined the term morality in any of its articles or any place in the Constitution that we can't find the term constitutional morality. The term constitutional morality, therefore, is an undefined code of conduct wherein the judiciary is having enormous power to define the scope and limitations of this term. Dr. Ambedkar, during his speech in Constitutional Assembly, quoted Groce to define constitutional morality. And according to the definition given by Ambedkar in the Constitutional Assembly, constitutional morality refers to rule of law, and everyone, including the organs of the state, are required to adhere to the principles of constitutional morality. Constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment because of the fact that those who are all holding the power always prefer to consider themselves as the supreme authority. According to the principle of constitutional morality, the Constitution will be considered to be the supreme document and not the authority. The authority would be considered subordinate to the Constitution. The constitutional morality will be considered as supreme. Thus, it needs to be cultivated. However, what we can see here is that the Supreme Court is given an undefined scope of power to define what constitutional morality is. This is very dangerous and it needs to be carefully looked into. And it is our duty as the citizens of the nation and as members of civil society to cultivate the spirit of rule of law and subject even the judiciary and all other agencies of the state to the limitations set by the Constitution. The true meaning of the term constitutional morality is that majority's rule should not be allowed in a modern democracy. The populist majoritarian power should not be allowed to take over the space of democratic discussions and debates. While legislative and executive are subjected to strict scrutiny by the judicial authority, what we can observe is that due to various political circumstances and various judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court, the judiciary is something that went beyond the checks and went beyond the power, went beyond the power of legislative and executive, and it has grown to be a bigger organism of the state, wherein it tries to control all other agencies of the state, but other agencies are not being able to check and balance the power of the judiciary. Judiciary is also, what one must realize, that judiciary is also a creation of the Constitution, and it must be subjected to the restrictions which are prescribed by the Constitution. The judicial notion, what is interesting is that even the judicial notion of constitutional morality varies from not only from one judgment to another, but it varies from one judge to other. In the famous case of Nalsa versus Union of India, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court held that the appointment of judges cannot be through the system of NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission. Honorable Justice Chandrachud, in his judgment, wrote a paragraph wherein he observed that whether we as members of judiciary, the judges, have emancipated ourselves from other organs of the state and allowed the constitutional morality and has grown beyond the constitutional morality, wherein the theory of checks and balances are not applicable to the judiciary. And we are using the term independence to justify those actions. So this was something critical, which was noted by Honorable Justice Chalameshwar in the case of Nalsa versus Union of India, wherein he pointed out that how the term constitutional morality is often used by courts to justify its understanding of constitutional morality and using it to establish its supremacy in a democratic nation. Unpredictable. The constitutional morality, according to judiciary, according to the judgments of the judiciary, is unpredictable. As all of us are aware of the famous Sabrimala judgment, which was considered to be a revolutionary judgment that valued rights of citizens over the beliefs which have been held by sections of the society. However, in the same judgment, two judges used the term constitutional morality to justify their completely opposite views. Justice Indu Malhotra, who delivered the minority judgment or the dissenting judgment in that particular case, said that constitutional morality in a pluralistic society and secular polity would reflect that the followers of various sects are given the freedom to practice their faith in accordance with the tenets of their religion. It is irrelevant whether the practice is rational or logical. The notion of rationality cannot be applied in matters of religion by the court. So she used constitutional morality to say that the notion of rationality cannot be invoked in matters of religion. On the other hand, Honorable Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, who delivered the majority opinion in that particular case, said that equality is something that equality is a right that is placed above all other rights. And it is a protective shield that protects citizens from the arbitrary authority of the state. And these are the founding principles on which the Constitution itself is based upon, or the constitutional morality in itself is based upon. And he said that exclusionary practices are contrary to constitutional morality. See how same in one case, two judges have used the same concept to justify their completely different views. If the court is allowed to describe constitutional morality, define constitutional morality according to their whims and fancies, what we will be observing is an unbounded judicial creativity where judges will be making law from day to day, and judges will be setting new and new constitutional conventions, as observed by Justice Hugo Black in the landmark case of Griswold versus Connecticut. What is the major conclusions which are being drawn by the researchers, or what the findings which the researchers draw out from this paper to solve this particular issue is that the new justice ideals which are developed by the Supreme Court should be welcomed, because it is very essential to satisfy the changing needs of the societies. Constitution was written way back we adopted it way back in 1950. The challenges that we are facing today could not have been thought about by the constitutional makers. Hence, the judges should give in new interpretations to secure and to provide justice to the citizens. However, judges should not be allowed to be lawmakers. They should not be allowed to be lawmakers who fill in the silences of the law by justifying themselves by saying that we are here to fill the silences of law by creating new legislations. The act of creation of new legislations by the judiciary cannot be justified. Constitutionalism is also applicable to judiciary. The rule of law is also applicable to judiciary. Judiciary should be made more accountable by properly define the limits of the term constitutional morality, and the judiciary should focus on keeping itself away from the allegation of arbitrary exercise of its own power of judicial review. Then only, as a democratic nation, it will be able to perform the ultimate aim of instilling the spirit of constitutional morality, instilling the spirit of rule of law in the minds of the citizens of the nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arjun.
Thank you, organizers.
Yeah.
Congrats, sir, and everyone.
Today, this was the last presentation of today's session. And thank you all for the participants. And especially for Girish Kumar sir from the long waiting, and now you are joined and giving your showing the same energy level in the morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, sir.
Okay. So tomorrow morning 9:30 the portal will be open, and the session will be starting by 10 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
By that, take care. Bye.
Meet you in the morning.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.